Welcome back to another session of Out of Context. Tonight, I will again be reading a book. I'm not going to tell you what it is, though. Let's get started, shall we? Oh, actually, before I begin, there is one minor alteration that I should bring to light. At the suggestion of one of my friends, who supposedly likes me, I have been told that what I should actually do is, upon finishing a sentence where I might have messed up the words, I should actually drink. So, we're going to see how it goes. I think this chapter that I'm about to read from this different book is a little bit longer than the one from last week, but honestly, I don't know. I just kind of picked it randomly, so. Here we go. Early Friday morning, a number of passengers awoke and dressed and climbed to the topmost decks to watch the sun come up. Although sunrise would not officially occur until 5:30, already the eastern sky was beginning to brighten. Elbridge and Maud Thompson of Seymour, Indiana, both 32 years old and traveling in first class, were in position by 4:30 a.m., as were second cabin passengers Bell, 49, and Theodore Naish, 59, son of a bitch, I have to drink already, of Kansas City. At about 5, the two couples spotted a warship off the port side, distant, traveling fast on a course parallel to the Lusitania. Oh, God. This is not going to be helpful. Mrs. Thompson called it a battleship, though in fact it was HMS Partridge, a high-speed destroyer with 3 funnels. Aboard the Partridge, the officers and crew of the early morning watch also saw the Lusitania. For early risers like the Naishes and Thompsons, the sight of this robust warship was a comfort. Its presence affirmed the reassuring remarks Captain Turner had made at the previous night's concert. Said Mrs. Naish, "We had been told that we were protected all the way by warships, wireless, and that submarine destroyers would escort us in the channel." By channel, she was referring to the St. George's Channel. The Partridge had no such orders. The destroyer, capable of making over 30 knots, continued past at a brisk pace. I need to read a romance novel. That's a terrible idea, both for my well-being and everyone else's ears. At about 6 a.m., the Lusitania encountered heavy fog. Captain Turner reduced speed to 15 knots and ordered the ship's foghorn activated. Like other passengers aboard, the Naishes had a penchant for timing things, a function, perhaps, of the fact that there was little else to do aboard the ship. They clocked the blasts of the foghorn at 1 a minute. Theodore found the horn unsettling. "I do not like this," he told his wife. "It is too much like calling for trouble." Throughout the ship, passengers awoke abruptly and upon looking out their portholes and windows, saw only a milky blur. Charles Laureate stayed in bed until his usual shipboard wake-up time of 8 o'clock, then got up and took his usual sea bath. This morning he had little enthusiasm for the process. As the horn was blowing and the weather was thick, I returned to my berth for a few extra hours' snooze. I instructed the steward that if he didn't hear from me by 12 o'clock, he was to call me, as that would give me ample time to get ready for lunch at 1. The foghorn seemed not to bother Laureate, possibly because of his inside room and its lack of portholes. Captain Turner placed extra lookouts to watch for other vessels. One of these was Leo Thompson, a crewman assigned special lookout duty for the 2-hour watch that began at 10 a.m. He climbed the ladder to the crow's nest, about 1/3 the way up the forward mast. There he and another crewman, George Clinton, were to spend the next 2 hours staring into the fog, sometimes with marine glasses. Thompson owned a pair of his own. Sometimes with just the naked eye. It was tedious but crucial work. Fog was dangerous, especially in crowded waters like these. but it also affected protection from submarines. In heavy fog, only chance could bring a submarine commander close enough to a ship to see it through his periscope or from his conning tower, and if he was that close, he was too close, at great risk of collision. As long as the fog persisted, Captain Turner had little cause to worry about U-boats. At 11 o'clock, the fog began to dissipate. In the crow's nest, Thompson and Clinton now had the extraordinary experience of moving through the dispersing fog as if flying in an aircraft through the clouds. At intervals, sun warmed their perch and leavened the morning chill. Sometime between 11 and noon, Thompson caught his first sight of the Irish coast. He was able to see it over the top of the fog, but only with his binoculars, and even then the terrain was obscured by mist. Son of a bitch. What he saw, he said later, was just the loom of the land through the haze. He called out to the bridge below, "Land on the port beam." The fog continued to fade, and soon the decks were bathed in a yellowing mist that foretold sunshine to come. In London, a mosaic of information had by now accumulated in Blinker Hall's intelligence division and in room 40 that showed that only one submarine was in the waters off County Cork, and that it had to be U-20, commanded by Captain Walter Schweiger, a talented and aggressive commander. As the morning progressed, more information arrived in the form of 2 messages that provided additional details about the demise of the Centurion. The ship had been attacked at 1 p.m. Thursday. All 44 of its crew were rescued after spending 10 hours at sea in lifeboats. One message stated, "Number and directions of submarine unknown." Yes, I'm drinking. But by then, news about the attacks on the Centurion, the Candidate, and the schooner Earl of Latham was already in Liverpool newspapers. Alfred Allen Booth, chairman of Cunard, learned of the attacks while reading his morning paper over breakfast at his home. The meaning was clear, at least to him. He knew his company's flagship was due to travel the same waters that very day. Booth quit breakfast and rushed to see the senior naval officer at Liverpool, Captain Harry Stileman, and pleaded with him to take measures to protect the Lusitania. Good Lord. Booth urged that a message be sent to Turner notifying him that the 2 Harrison Line ships had been torpedoed and sunk. Under war rules, Booth was not himself empowered to send a warning, or any other command, directly to Turner. At the start of the war, all ships of British registry came under the dominion of the Admiralty's Trade Division, to give the Admiralty maximum flexibility in commandeering ships for military use, as well as to prevent confusion that might arise if conflicting orders were sent to a ship from both its owners and the Admiralty, a circumstance that Cunard chairman Alfred Booth conceded would be very dangerous. This is going to get very old very quickly, Cassie, just for the record. Exactly what else occurred during Booth's meeting with Admiral Stileman is unclear, but Booth came away believing that a detailed message would be sent and that the Admiralty would order the Lusitania to divert to Queenstown, well short of Liverpool, until the immediate U-boat threat was past. Off Ireland, the Lusitania moved through pockets of fog, but visibility improved by the minute, and the threat of a collision rapidly receded. Turner ordered the foghorn deactivated. Now, however, the risk of detection by a submarine increased. Anxiety on the bridge rose sharply with the arrival, at 11:30 a.m., of a wireless message from the Admiralty, which stated, quote, "Submarines active in southern part of Irish Channel, last heard of 20 miles south of Coningbeg light vessel." The sender added, "Make certain Lusitania gets this." The Coningbeg light vessel was dead ahead on Turner's course, just before the narrowest expanse, 45 miles across, of the St. George's Channel. The message also indicated there was more than one submarine. If the submarines, plural, were in fact 20 miles south of the lightship, they were positioned about halfway across the channel. On a clear day, and by now the fog was nearly gone, the smoke from the Lusitania's 3 operating funnels would be visible for 20 miles in any direction, meaning a lookout on a submarine at the center of the channel would have an excellent chance of spotting the ship. The warning described the submarines as being active, but what exactly did active mean? The message was apparently the product of Chairman Booth's plea, but it fell short of what he had asked for. Only 18 words long, it conveyed no details about what had occurred over the previous 24 hours. Captain Turner, the one man at that moment who needed details the most, never learned of the loss of the 2 Harrison Line vessels and the Earl of Latham. With the fog now dissipated, Turner brought his speed up to 18 knots. He ordered maximum pressure maintained in his 3 available boiler rooms in the event of a sudden burst of speed became necessary. I think I messed that up too. I kind of hate you, Cassie. Hopefully I'll become less honest as I get further into the drink. At noon, as per Charles Laureate's request, the steward assigned to his cabin arrived to awaken him. The steward told Laureate the ship had picked up Cape Clear, a familiar landmark at the southwest tip of Ireland, and that the ship's time had been set ahead to Greenwich Mean Time. Laureate got out of bed, put on his knickerbocker suit, and was up on deck by 12:50. He knew the time because he checked his wristwatch, set as always to Boston time, and calculated the Greenwich equivalent. Lunch for first-class passengers began at 1 o'clock. He wanted to take a 10-minute stroll first. He noted that the ship seemed to be loafing along, and saw as well that the results of the mileage pool, posted at noon, showed the ship had only traveled 484 miles. Although Laureate found this slow, in fact it worked out to an average of slightly more than 20 knots, and that included several hours through fog at 15. Still, this was well below the 25-knot pace he had expected the ship to maintain. It was a beautiful day, then. Light wind, a smooth sea, and bright sunshine, Laureate wrote. Along the port side he saw the good old Irish coast. The coast, though, was still a long way off, merely a green slash on the horizon. The fine weather made Laureate uneasy. I thought to myself that if a German submarine really meant business, she would have to wait weeks for a more ideal chance than the present weather conditions. With a flat, unbroken sea such as that around us, the periscope of a submarine could certainly carry a long distance. The smoothness of the sea was the remarkable thing. Laureate likened it to a pancake. One of the ship's bellboys said it was just as flat as a billiard table. Oh, come on. Connecticut passenger Jane McFarquhar. What the fuck is that? Jane climbed to one of the upper decks and looked out over the glittering seascape. She and her 16-year-old daughter had just finished setting out the clothes they would wear upon arrival in Liverpool the next morning. They planned to leave their current outfits behind on the ship. The view was grand, Jane said. The sun shining, the water smooth, and land visible on either side. As I gazed around the beautiful scene, I thought, where is this spoken of danger? The end of our voyage is almost in view, and we have no sign of danger whatever. You stupid. On Friday morning, Schweiger kept U-20 on the surface to continue recharging its batteries. He stood atop the conning tower. The sea was quilted with fog, but here and there sunlight gleamed through. Visibility improved quickly. The sea was flat under a 1-knot breeze. All of a sudden, visibility has become very good, Schweiger wrote in his log. While this gave him a long view of the surrounding sea, it also provided that view to any British patrol boat or destroyer that happened to be in the vicinity. God damn it. The flatness of the surface increased the danger that enemy lookouts would spot U-20 even when submerged to periscope depth, for the feathery white wake of Schweiger's periscope would be visible for miles. and in fact, a trawler off in the distance now began moving in U-20's direction. Schweiger ordered a fast dive and raised his periscope. The vessel approached slowly, in a manner he found unsettling. Therefore, he wrote, we dived to a depth of 24 meters to get away from the trawler. The time was 10:30 a.m. At 12 p.m., he wrote, I shall rise again to a depth of 11 meters and take a periscope observation. But shortly before that was to happen, at 11:50 a.m., a surge of excitement passed through the submarine. Even 80 feet below the surface, the men in U-20 could hear the sound of a ship overhead, transmitted through the hull. Schweiger wrote in his log, a vessel with a very heavy engine passes over our boat. From the sound, Schweiger knew it was neither a destroyer nor a trawler, but something far larger, moving fast. It passed directly above, confirming the prudence of cruising at a depth that cleared even the largest ship's keels. Schweiger waited a few minutes, then returned to periscope depth to try to identify the ship. With the foghorn off and the sun high and bright, the Lusitania's passengers took to the open decks to play shuffleboard, throw medicine balls, and take part in other deck games. Older children played jump rope, as always. The youngest paraded the decks with nannies and stewardesses, on foot or in prams, with their sucking tube. What is a sucking tube? What is it? I guess that's like a pacifier or something. That's a weird word. I apologize, I got distracted. With their sucking tubes hung around their necks or affixed to their clothing. In the shaded portions of the deck and in those areas exposed to the 18-knot breeze generated by the ship's forward motion, it was still cool enough to require coats. One woman wore a large black fur. God damn it. This being the last... I'm going to run out of a drink at this rate. This being the last full day of the voyage, with the sun so bright and the air so clear, passengers seemed to take a special effort to dress well and with a little flair. A 7-year-old girl wore a pink and white striped cotton frock under a black velvet coat lined with red silk, then added a gold ring, a red coral necklet, and a mother-of-pearl brooch. The coat imparted to her the look of a red-winged blackbird. Pink seemed to be a popular color for boys. Okay. One 5-year-old boy tore around in a pink wool coat over a checked jacket and knickers. A man in his late 20s, dressed with clear intent to dazzle. He wore blue Serge trousers. S-E-R-G-E. We'll go with Sergey. I don't give a shit. Striped cotton shirt, white merino pants, light lace-up boots, gray socks with light blue soles, light-colored suspenders, leather belt, and nickel buckle. And this, a pink merino vest. So, merino vest, merino pants. Dressing to impress. I like it, dude. Many passengers settled into deck chairs to read, just as they'd done over the preceding 6 days. Dwight Harris sat on deck for a time reading a book about the Medicis, then went to the purser's office to retrieve his engagement ring, his other jewels, and the $500 in gold that he had parked there at the start of the voyage. He went to his cabin and used a watch chain to hang several pieces around his neck, including the ring. What? I pinned the big diamond brooch inside the pocket of my coat, he wrote, and before leaving my cabin unlocked the camera bag that held my life belt. This was the belt he had bought at Wanamaker's in New York the day before sailing. Harris had not yet run out of exclamation points. I put the gold in my trousers pockets and then went down to lunch. Despite the calm weather, Kansas City passenger Theodore Neisch was seasick, as he had been throughout the voyage. He urged his wife Belle to go up on deck without him to see the Irish coast and its islands in sunshine. He knew from past experience how lovely the view was. Belle at first demurred. I replied that his word was enough. I could see them when we returned, and if fog prevented, pictures would satisfy me. But Theodore insisted, and she obliged. She was glad that she had. A lovelier day cannot be imagined. The air was warm, no wind, bright sun, smooth sea. Throughout the ship there was that mix of sorrow and expectation that always marked the end of a voyage, but now it was joined by the relief of having made it to England safe and sound. On the bridge, Turner received a new message from the Admiralty that confused things further. Submarines 5 miles south of Cape Clear, proceeding west when sighted at 10 a.m. The Lusitania had already passed Cape Clear. If correct, this message indicated that the threat might also be passed. The submarines, plural again, were behind and heading out to sea. Captain Turner congratulated himself on apparently missing these in the fog. He knew that even if their commanders now spotted the smoke from the ship's funnels and turned around, they would have no hope of catching up. While this offered some comfort, there was still the matter of the earlier report of submarines active in the St. George's Channel, south of the Konigsberg Light vessel, dead ahead. I hate you, Cassie. At his periscope, Schweiger made a fast 360-degree sweep of the sea, then rotated the apparatus until he found the ship that had just passed overhead. It was a prize indeed, and not just in terms of tonnage. Long and narrow, with a razor bow, it sliced easily through the flat sea. Its funnels blew thick black smoke that showed its engine crew were working hard to achieve maximum speed. Schweiger did not need his war pilot, Lance, to help identify this ship. It was a large, armored cruiser, British, of about 6,000 tons. He let it go. He had no choice. At his top submerged speed of 9 knots, Schweiger had no chance of catching the cruiser. Even his surface maximum of 15 knots would not have helped, for the cruiser was speeding away at what he estimated to be 18 knots. And had Schweiger for some reason been foolhardy enough to try surfacing, the warship's guns would have sunk his boat within minutes. Schweiger followed anyway, at periscope depth, just in case the cruiser happened to change its course in a manner that would allow him to overtake it and launch an attack. But the ship ran at top speed, zigzagging, and soon was far in the distance. Schweiger later told his friend Valentiner how at this point, exasperated, he unleashed a torrent of profanity. After the early days of the war, Valentiner explained, you rarely had a chance to loose a torpedo at any warship as big as a cruiser, and many a U-boat never caught sight of one during the entire war. The British Navy, like its German counterpart, kept its big warships locked safely away, and did not send them roaming around to act as good targets for U-boats. God damn it. The ship was in fact HMS Juno, an old cruiser now serving as a coastal patrol vessel. It was based in Queenstown and was speeding back to port precisely because of the latest submarine alerts issued by the Admiralty. As it traveled, its crew took a routine measurement of water temperature and found it to be 55 degrees Fahrenheit. After I was through swearing, Schweiger told Valentiner, I noticed that the fog was lifting. Presently, I could see blue sky. Schweiger recorded the encounter at 12:15 p.m. Half an hour later, he surfaced and returned to his westward course to continue his voyage home. Conservation of fuel was now a priority. He could not delay. The journey back to Emden would take another week. By now, the weather had cleared to a degree that was almost startling. Unusually good visibility, Schweiger noted. Very beautiful weather. On the horizon, something new caught his eye. Okay. So, this book is called Dead Wake by Eric Larson. It is obviously about the final voyage and subsequent sinking of the Lusitania, which was fairly important in American history. The book does go into the details of how it specifically didn't really get us into the war, but it certainly didn't hurt. So it was pretty good. If you don't know that the Lusitania sank at this point, Calixi, we should have a chat about where you went to school. It's been a few years. It's been a few years. you should know. You should. And I feel like you do, because you probably do. Yeah. This is actually an interesting book. I enjoyed reading it. I actually read it earlier this year. I was going to read you guys the book that I was reading this week, but I really just don't think I'm willing to subject you to business books, just yet at least. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to go have a couple more drinks and probably send some messages to Cassie about exactly that. Thanks, everybody. See you later.